to go in. What about you? If you are a young person listening today, did you work when you were at school, and has it helped you, or do you think it had a bad impact on your exam grades? You tell us. You're the ones who are living this now. I could tell you what happened to me when I was 16, but my goodness me, that was 30 years ago. It's not relevant to the workplace now. I want to hear about young people now and the expectations from your school or your college and your parents, and whether you wanted to work or not. And if you've got a youngster in your family, what advice are you giving them? Are they looking for little part-time jobs? 03459 811111. To one of my favourite callers now, Lee, who's in Leeds. Leeds, the city as opposed to the village. Nice to have you on again, Lee. How are you?
Morning, Jules. How are you doing, love?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. So we're talking today, Lee, about whether it's a good idea to get some work experience while you're still at school. There's some evidence that your GCSE grades might dip, particularly for girls who work during term time. What do you know as a young working man? What do you know about companies and what they're interested in, and whether or not it is a good idea to have had a little job while you were still at school?
Well, when I was listening to your previous callers, my circumstances, I feel, was totally different because I struggled with school massively. I just about scraped through my Year 6 stats, but when I went to secondary school, I was in bottom sets of everything. I was massively struggling. I then got a paper round for before work and after work, before school, and after school. That was when I was 12 years old. And then I told my teachers about that, and they were fine. Some mornings, if the papers was late, I'd arrive at school around 20 minutes late. But again, they didn't mind. When I was 13, I started to work in the shop as well as doing the paper round. So I was getting up at 5 a.m. I was working from 5:30 to 7:30, doing my paper round, going to school for 9 o'clock in the morning, finishing school at 3, doing the Yorkshire Evening Post paper round, and then working in the shop again between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. So I was only getting around 5 hours sleep per night. But when I spoke to my school about this, they loved it.
Why?
In fact, I remember very clearly. Our school wasn't the best. We were actually put in special measures by the regulators. And they said, look, we understand education is not for everybody. Some people struggle with education, and they could not see me going to college, going to uni. They could not see me following the education path. So they went, if you get out of work now, this will benefit you massively in the long run.
Now, in one sense, I agree, but it sounds to me as though those working hours were excessive, because there's no way you're going to be able to perform at your best, whatever your personal best is, in the classroom if you are only getting 5 hours sleep, particularly as a teenager. Teenage boys need epic amounts of sleep, from what I'm told.
Well, the funny thing is, when I was turned 15 years old, they actually said to me, look, if we give you the option, would you want to leave school? And I went, well, yes and no. So in the end, Education Leeds decided to put me on something called long-term work placement.
Right.
So I was attending school for 2 hours per day, 1 hour maths, 1 hour English. I was then working at a garden centre between midday and 6 p.m. before doing my evening job. The funny thing is, they actually paid you back then as well. So I was earning £8 an hour when I was 15. My mum was a cleaner, earning less than me.
Did your money go into the family, or did you get to keep it?
I started to pay, my mum called it a bond at the time. It was basically rent for living at home. So I was paying her £277 every 4 weeks. I then paid £50 for my council tax, again, to my mum. So when I left the family home, age 16, to move into my first accommodation, my rent, funnily enough, was $240. So I was actually saving money.
So you'd also learnt to budget. You'd learnt what money meant. You'd learnt to budget. I still think there's something, I don't know why, there's something ingrained in me that thinks your school shouldn't have encouraged you to drop out before 16, but maybe I'm just programmed to think that, because that's what we ask of children, and often we ask children to stay in educational training to 18 now. Did your school do right by you, Lee? Did it all come good?
definitely. I remember, I switched jobs last year, still in retail, but I switched to a very large, well-known department store. On the application form, they didn't have a form for work, for school, at all. It was purely work experience. It's actually put on the form, if you have been in full-time education, please just give us a reference from your tutor/teacher. We do not need to know what qualifications you've had.
How interesting. So they really, frankly, didn't give us stuff about your GCSEs or anything else?
That wasn't
right, what they were looking for.
There's one other point that I want to make before I go as well, Jules, if you don't mind. I did apply when I was 15 to work with a large, well-known company. They turned me down because I was under 16. They said, because you do not have a national insurance number, we can't take you on.
Right.
And I think that, again, is one of the reasons why it's dropped. It's because smaller companies are dying out, large companies are taken over. Large companies, on the whole, do not want under 16. There's too much risks with insurance, with tax. It's a complete minefield for them.
That's a really interesting point. Lee, I'm very intrigued. I'm really glad of your call, bringing another whole argument to bear on what's really important, studying or getting work experience. Lovely to chat. You take care of yourself.
And you, Jules. Thank you.
Bless you. Lee in Leeds. Join in 03459